Arcade, en 1998. Avec Lyn Hejinian, Barrett Watten et Ron Silliman, il est le co-auteur de Leningrad, American Writers in the Soviet Union, publié en 1991. Professeur de littérature à l'Université de Californie à San Diego, il a également été le premier conservateur de la Mandeville Special Collections Library à l'Université de San Diego, qui a acquis les archives de nombreux poètes américains. On lui doit la nouvelle édition des poèmes de George Oppen chez New Directions en 2002. Également critique, il a consacré des ouvrages à la poésie américaine moderne et contemporaine et poursuit depuis quelques années une réflexion sur le handicap. Il est l'auteur de The San Francisco Renaissance, Poetics and Community at Mid-Century, publié en 89, Ghostlier Demarcations, Modern Poetry in the Material World, 97, Guys Like Us, Citing Masculinity in Cold War Poetics, en 2003, et The Concerto for the Left Hand, Disability in the Defamiliar Body, qui est à paraître aux presses de l'Université du Michigan. Je suis très contente aussi de laisser la place à Michael Davidson qui va lire son premier poème avec Cole Swanson.
Thank you, Abigail, and tous les autres, à double échange, invite me here to Paris. It's wonderful to be here. This first poem has a ghostly doppelganger, so I've asked Cole Swanson to be the ghostly doppelganger reader. Subject matter. I'm afloat on a sea, you see, and this sloop comes into view. It could be a seal or a green furl of a wave, but it's not. It's a numeral. And there's this naked guy.
There's this naked person.
Who's not wearing
It illustrates.
anything you could put your hand on, trying to illustrate a dream.
Whose name must be fib.
First you open the
A
door,
frame to modify a door.
and it's the wrong room.
Like a way of walking around a reservoir.
You've been there before, then you climb a flight, and someone stares at you.
Filling in a form.
This much is familiar.
With questions framed around it, like where do you begin?
Stars form a story
And
overhead.
instantly, there are all these
Cities made out of minor metropoli,
stairs you could climb.
and you're caught in it,
Or where to end, say, in Tasmania, at the horizon,
trying to catch a
in
bus,
the furrowed leaves of a
for
coleus.
which there is no change. Chance never enters into it.
A life force minus the life
Some parts of speech,
equals number, one,
and a fourth,
two sentences
I'm hardly necessary.
discover a third city in whose multiple talk,
To keep up appearances,
something like talk
but
occurs.
still I compose red for the ideal
It
string,
is late spring,
black for the concrete anchors,
fog forms in the afternoon. I listen to you in Arcadia,
gold,
where the light is
or
gold,
where a ship falls into a book whose name
and in multiple
is
strings,
what the sea saw.
you become a voice. It must be mine saying,
It must have been me.
ancient gong, ancient song, sing of land's end, when you see two skies, one of eyes, the other of seas.
This is called the second city. Even though there are motorized conveyances, I am on foot. Even though there is a map, I negotiate the streets by landmark. There are no landmarks, but a series of edges common to several cities. The hill is in San Francisco. The great shopping district with its glittering windows and esplanade before the fountain is in New York. And the river with its bridges is in Paris. I'm working on the park with its glass botanical gardens, marble pillars in the distance, left over from the exposition. There's probably a hill from which I descend and arrive at the market district below, clearly indicated by the word brick, like those on the west side of Buffalo. To make this descent is to negotiate the terrifying grid of hill cities, roads dead-ending against canyons, barriers where a street careens into space and continues below, bearing the same name, so that a second city rises out of the forgotten one, more pointed because not yet filled in by monument or palisade, the place where water touches land and forms a line, the leaf-like veins of streets. It is too late for the bus, and I must walk from North Beach to the Bronx, or something with a B, through the middle city, the place a middle occupies when you are no longer familiar, and the buildings have only been seen by night from a car and by lights. I am afraid someone will address me in French, and I will forget the word for myself, having so recently arrived. And yet to be a stranger is to be swallowed up without words, without glasses, and the envelope with a numbered series. In the second city, I live out the dream of the first, living neither for its access and glamour, nor dying from its disregard, simply talking toward the twin spires of an ancient cathedral, like a person becoming like a person. Abigail has been kind enough to translate a number of these poems, and so she will be joining me here for the rest of the time. This one is called Cloud. It doesn't show, but I'm making up a new word to replace Plato with a tape delay. But that's two words, one for you, and one the first makes impossible to say in unison. But in time, the cloud will return in the same shape, and you call upon an ion to verify an elephant, but he'll say anything. The power of suggestion is water. He never forgets.
Nuage. Ça ne se voit pas, mais j'invente un mot nouveau pour remplacer Platon par un écho électromagnétique. Mais cela fait deux mots, un pour toi et un. Le premier rend impossible à dire, à l'unisson, mais un nuage finira par revenir. Sous la même forme, et tu fais appel à un lion pour confirmer un éléphant, mais il dira n'importe quoi. Le pouvoir de suggestion est une...
This is called Century of Hands, but it's actually Siècle à main, and it's really indebted to Claude Royer-Journeau and his great magazine of a long time ago. So think of it as Siècle à main. The libido portion goes haywire. I fly off in several directions and occur to myself at the same time in a number of colors. Alors, I am a liquid substance and receive letters from the sun. Tiens, I believe a rock is an intelligent machine with designs on my inside. First the spleen, like a red tongue, then the liver, known as the bad aubergine. No one must know this, I whisper in a bent-over posture to my mirror. And when they turn off the water and lock all the doors, it is my books they refuse me, my map, my gun. Who is it has made my tongue so treacherous that the most seductive caller is told I am an aging widower who has moved out of town? Who plants these deceptive fungi next to the fence that I may be tested again and again in the crucible of taxonomies? May he be prevented from witnessing my nova, light pouring out of the sky. May he become doxa, the speech of clerks and shopkeepers, that we become the words for lathe and forge pounded out of capital. I exit history through the rear, the only orifice left unguarded. What was intended for me is a bomb in a bouquet, and I am its sender. Either way, I return as the one who opens the box and checks the numbers, filthy messenger of that effulgence destined only for me. I make the words dance. I make the silence.
Siècle à main. La partie libido s'emballe, je m'envole dans plusieurs directions et me présente à moi-même en même temps, en un certain nombre de couleurs. Alors, je suis une substance liquide et je reçois des lettres du soleil. Tiens, il me semble qu'un rocher est une machine intelligente avec des vues sur mes tripes. D'abord la bile, comme une langue rouge, puis le foie, surnommé la mauvaise aubergine. Personne ne doit savoir ceci, murmurai-je, penché en avant à mon miroir. Et lorsqu'il coupe l'eau et verrouille toutes les portes, ce sont mes livres qu'il refuse, c'est moi, mon plan, mon fusil. Qui donc a rendu ma langue si traîtresse, au point que la plus séduisante personne qui appelle soit avertie que je suis un veuf vieillissant ayant quitté la ville? Qui plante ces champignons trompeurs à côté de la barrière pour que je passe de façon répétée par le creuset des taxonomies? Qu'on l'empêche d'assister à ma nova, sa lumière tombant à flot du ciel, qu'il devienne doxa, le discours des employés de bureau et des commerçants, afin que nous devenions les mots pour tour et forge, tirés du capital à grands coups. Je sors de l'histoire par l'arrière, seul orifice laissé sans surveillance. Ce qui m'était destiné, c'est une bombe dans un bouquet, et j'en suis l'expéditeur. De toute façon, je reviens comme celui qui ouvre la boîte et vérifie les numéros, messager dégoûtant de ce rayonnement qui n'est destiné qu'à moi. Je fais les mots, leur danse, je fais le silence.
The terror. When we come full circle to the rose garden in the imaginary, will we remember the terror, the names whose crimes are invented in order to have something else to kill, the king's absent face at the window across from the dock, the names of the trains that run on time for the first time? I think of this when I read of the stupidity of princes with breakfast. By midday, the stock market has made one of them rich, and part of my breakfast has bought his lunch and paid someone to espalier his roses across an adobe wall. They never die. The pronouns become so malleable, they refer to anyone, but never oneself. Something must be exchanged for the privilege of joining a word to its source. Something must not fit for its replacement to be the wrong size. Then the terror begins in the hot weather when they drain all the pools and the bidding wars keep them empty. The contractor who will inherit the earth is figuring out how to do it even as we speak. Just listen.
La terreur. Quand nous bouclerons la boucle à la roseraie de l'imaginaire, nous souviendrons-nous de la terreur, ces noms dont les crimes sont inventés afin d'avoir quelque chose d'autre à tuer, le visage absent du roi à la fenêtre, de l'autre côté du banc des accusés, les noms de ces trains qui circulent à l'heure pour la première fois. Je pense à ceci lorsque je lis quelque chose sur la stupidité des princes au petit déjeuner. À midi, la bourse a rendu l'un d'eux riche et une partie de mon petit déjeuner lui a payé son déjeuner. Et payer quelqu'un pour lui palisser ses rosiers contre un mur d'adobe. Ils ne meurent jamais, les pronoms deviennent si malléables qu'ils renvoient à n'importe qui, mais jamais à soi. Quelque chose doit être échangé contre le privilège d'unir un mot à sa source. Quelque chose doit ne pas coïncider pour que sa pièce de rechange soit de la mauvaise taille. Alors débute la terreur, dans la chaleur, lorsqu'ils videront toutes les piscines et que les guerres d'enchères les maintiendront vides. L'entrepreneur qui héritera de la terre cherche le moyen de le faire au moment même où nous parlons. Écoutez bien.
Recently, it seemed as though the war in Iraq is the only thing that one can write about. It's a constant drumbeat, and I wanted to read a few poems from the first time the U.S. invaded Iraq in the early 90s, and this is a sequence called Screens. And what I did was to read the newspaper in the morning and then fill a screen of the computer with text every single day during the Gulf War. So screens means the screen of the computer, but it also means the screening of information through the news. It also means the screen of the television and so forth. So these are just a few. It seemed to me that the only way that you can address these traumatic events is by focusing on something very intimate, something very close to home. So I chose to write a lot about my family and my children in this sequence, because they seem to be the most at stake in these dark times. So this is this would be February 12th, 1991. Out of the bunker/shelter target, brown lumps of hair and matted clothing on stretchers, red-brown, red-orange. What distinguishes the body without a word from other bodies is a lolling of flesh, head hanging over the edge, while all around bodies tensed with purpose lift, point, and dig. Cut to Cheney, cut to Neil behind rostrum, cut to commander in the field saying his words. Go lonely verse to that capacious versus of thought, where blackened flesh of children hangs like ghost laundry. Surround gently what these bites have left behind. Be balm out of balm, salve out of salvo. Tear out eucalyptus on the hill, that the earth beneath might return in new forms. Burn the wood later, but bodies burned in the name of words return in forms impossible to say, and bereft of home, to these spaces go and make miserable life listen.
Donc, pour résumer, Michael disait que les deux poèmes qui suivent sont tirés d'une série qui s'intitule Écran et ont été écrits au cours de la première guerre du Golfe. Le premier est daté du 12 février 91. Sortant du bunker abri, cible, une masse brune de cheveux et de vêtements enchevêtrés sur une civière, rouge-brun, rouge, orange. Ce qui distingue ce corps sans un mot d'autre corps, c'est un ballottement de la chair, la tête qui pend en dehors du cadre, tandis que tout autour, des corps raidis d'intention lèvent, pointent et creusent. Plan de Cheney, plan de Neil derrière l'estrade, plan du commandant sur le terrain qui prononce ces mots. Va vers de solitude, jusqu'à ce spacieux verseau de pensée où la chair noircie des enfants pend comme une lessive spectrale, entoure doucement ce que ce zapping a laissé derrière lui, soit un baume sorti des bombes, un salut sorti des salves, arrache les eucalyptus sur la colline afin que la terre en dessous revienne sous des formes nouvelles, brûle le bois plus tard, mais les corps brûlés, au nom de mots, reviennent sous des formes impossibles à dire, et privé de foyer jusqu'en ces lieux va et force la vie misérable à écouter.
February 15th, 1991. Long night waiting at emergency for tiny bottle, woke warm, cool gray, screen sky. One plane flies west against it. George pulls up, starts weed whacker. Gulls in spiral fan out over the AAA. Are we vast and serene, as these columns claim, or portable, a box made of cardboard to hold letters? Sophie's sore spreads across her chin. I apply salve, but walls several meters thick contained the blast, sent bodies flying through space. The children could not be recognized except for their size.
15 février 91. Longue nuit à attendre aux urgences, une minuscule bouteille. Réveil tiède, ciel d'écran gris frais, un avion cap à l'ouest s'y détache. Georges se gare, démarre débroussailleuse, Mouette se déploie en spirale au-dessus de l'automobile club. Sommes-nous vastes et sereins comme le proclament ces colonnes, ou bien portables, boîtes faites de carton pour contenir des lettres? La plaie de Sophie s'étale sur tout son menton, j'y applique du baume, mais des murs épais de plusieurs mètres ont contenu l'explosion, envoyant voler les corps en l'air. Les enfants n'ont pu être identifiés, sinon par leur taille.
I'll read a few poems from the title sequence in the book called The Arcades, and to some extent this sequence is indebted to Dominique Fourcade, who showed me the arcades and took me around, so I'm grateful to him for that tour. So I'll read just a few of them. Correspondence. He conceived the plan of bringing two Persians to Paris where they would conduct amazement through their letters on occasional subjects. His subject is a book seemingly empty of opinions. On this point, we have constructed a fiction based on a city, the size of a city. The distinction is telling. Plot is an enticement to elaboration, governed by a square on which stands a column dedicated to those fallen in its construction. The fashionable shops on its perimeter betray an Italian locution. We exchange letters for handbags. I woke quirky and vague among seagulls and silvery tuna. Limp bouillon pulsates in the dining car as I arrive at consciousness. Had I arrested sequence in the pursuit of a stable regime, or would the display of handicrafts supplement a palpable boredom? The seraglio becomes a domestic version of the despotic state, just as this fetid car describes a religious intention. I hardly know where to begin, and thus conclude. I woke stiffly virtuous and relieved myself of anguish. A gelatinous archaism penetrates the Hotel Chopin at the end of a corridor of glass, in which I am reflected among corsets and hosiery. Perhaps we have become these reticules trimmed in ermine, but I yearn for a pictographic writing. The age demands a stereoscope with candids of temples, pyramids, and the spring beater. Implicitly, our letters attack the state of frozen desserts, while the cordial format invites penetration. Our empire is warmly regarded as necessary to their urban design. I await our experience with anticipation. This one is called Zombies, and it refers to a film by George Romero called The Dawn of the Dead, in which zombies take over a shopping mall. It's a great image of shoppers as zombies. All of these pieces in here are about consumerism at some level, and the way in which human beings become the commodities they buy. Zombies. Moving on to policy. Blue lights at the boulevard palpitate through blank air, prodding a sleeper into restless Jeremiad. Shoppers in shirt sleeves, guys with yellow stakes furnish Civic with a warehouse, first logo, then buy shares. I was in malls. Friends were buying wallets and guns as normal music pumped through the Narcissus corridor. Teens were contagious by telephones. What is improved is the passive, while tax makes silent, soothing speech. Those had been ghosts, now with earrings and biceps of money become text. Waking in a jungle, the owner ponders agency. Was I dream or camp stove? Are these hollows infinite with mortgage and 15 years? The shapes clamoring for flesh are actually money seeking heat. They spy you emerging from accessories like a fresh wind and follow you to the elevator.
Zombie. Passant à une politique, les lumières bleues au boulevard palpitent à travers l'air vacant, incitant un dormeur à une jérémiade inquiète. Des gens qui font leurs courses en bras de chemise, des types avec des piquets jaunes, équipent le civique d'un entrepôt, d'abord logo, puis acheter des parts. J'étais dans la galerie marchande, des amis achetaient des portefeuilles et des fusils, tandis que de la musique normale vrombissait le long du couloir Narcisse. Des ados étaient contagieux autour de téléphones. Ce qui est amélioré, c'est le passif, tandis que la TVA crée un discours silencieux et apaisant. Ceux-là avaient été des spectres, maintenant avec des boucles d'oreilles et des biceps de monnaie devenus texte. S'éveillant dans une jungle, le propriétaire médite l'entremise. Étais-je rêve ou camping-gaz? Ces creux sont-ils infinis d'hypothèques et de 15 ans? Les figures réclamant de la chair sont en fait de l'argent à la recherche de chaleur. Ils vous espionnent lorsque vous émergez d'accessoires, comme un vent frais, et vous suivent jusqu'à l'ascenseur.
This is called Translation, and it's a very rough translation of Baudelaire's Le Cygne. Against the black sea of a black night, a single light of the duty-free shop blazing on a broadcast horizon. All the drowned sailors are restored by its siren. Deseret changes. Old neighborhoods are an allegory one steps through. The predictable and repeated windows filled with the glass of novelty that by wearing becomes new as a pilgrim arrives refreshed in Jerusalem. I think of you, hapless shopper, stepping through mirrors with a map of Troy, only to find yourself frozen in representation, like a swan in Audubon. Dead sweaters roam the aisles searching for lost husbands. Within the cloacal streets of the old city that gather like phlegm in the throat, new boulevards form in the mind of a white architect nearing the end of a life spent among the dark consonants, the mass. We would be signs dragging once snowy plumage through ravaged construction sites, that progress raised visible portions of itself to explain the benefits of speed, the violet frisson of acceleration. Where was Africa? Someone in an office of tusks on the 14th floor asks. And in the absence of palms and musk, a museum of masks retains these black distances behind protective glass. In the aisles of exile, I think of forgotten sailors who search the horizon for a solid thing, when wings are signs of harbor, frozen like script in azure, and bring back junk for the stalls.
Traduction. Sur fond de mer noire, d'une nuit noire, une seule lumière, de la boutique duty-free, flamboyant sur un horizon radiodiffusé. Tous les marins noyés sont restaurés par sa sirène. Le Deseret change. Les vieux quartiers sont une allégorie que l'on traverse à pied. Ses fenêtres répétées et prévisibles, remplies du verre de la nouveauté, qui en s'usant devient neuf, comme un pèlerin arrive reposé à Jérusalem. Je pense à toi, acheteur infortuné, qui passe à travers les miroirs avec un plan de Troie pour ne trouver que toi-même, transi par la représentation comme un signe d'Audubon, Des pullovers morts errent dans les allées à la recherche de Marie perdue. Au sein du cloaque des rues de la vieille ville, qui se rassemblent comme des glaires dans la gorge, de nouveaux boulevards se forment dans l'esprit d'un architecte blanc approchant de la fin d'une vie passée parmi les consonnes sombres, la masse. Nous serions des cygnes traînant un plumage autrefois neigeux à travers des chantiers ravagés, afin que le progrès élève de visibles portions de lui-même pour expliquer les bienfaits de la vitesse, le frisson violet de l'accélération. Où était l'Afrique ? Demande quelqu'un dans un bureau d'ivoire au 14e étage, et en l'absence de palmes et de musc, un musée de masques conserve ses distances, noires, derrière des vitres protectrices. Dans les allées de l'exil, je pense aux marins oubliés qui scrutent l'horizon à la recherche d'une chose solide, lorsque les ailes sont signes d'un port, transi comme un graphe dans l'azur, et je rapporte de la camelote pour l'étal.
And I'll read a few recent poems. This is from a sequence called Bad Modernism. The first one has an epigraph by John Ashbery, "Suddenly all is loathing." And there's plenty to be unhappy about if I can just get the reception area festooned in time for their arrival, paper cups and those little plastic whatsits, so that gorged on meaning they troop through the glass doors seeking interpretation. First floor, mildly historical. Second floor, desire matrix. Parents accompany their indiscretion straight to the penthouse, and someone hands them a phone. Turtles, they're called, heads bobbing as though they had a choice to be party favors. Deep structure on your left, follow the clicking to a white cube. We only work part-time. The other part we illustrate profound malaise. I like these cream-filled versions, so unlike what we get at home. Having said which, we rewind the tape, slip it through a slot marked aha, and take the Elle home. The smell you smell afar is something boiling over. This is called Bad Modernism, The White City. And The White City was the name of the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in the 1890s, which displayed machinery and farm implements, and also displayed significantly ethnographic displays with so-called primitive tribes and Native Americans on display amongst the other exhibits. When the rotor hums for a long time among the gawkers, I fall into a ghost trance and become a white man again. Nothing must penetrate this history because nothing can be distinguished from itself. Down on midway placence, amid the lights, the dark beauties offer darkness. The eyes go there while the will stands still. In the Hall of Dynamos, the dead warriors will return in a language no one remembers. They have a stall in the pavilion of silence. The ears go there, searching for treaties, tales of the elders. From up here, the land is all parcels, like one of the new paintings. Nothing penetrates this illusion. Prose covers the brown earth, and in the hum of its scroll can be heard a crowd of the visitors clamoring at the entrance with their tickets to the White City. Let's do rebarb. This is called rebarbative. Rebarbative is a word that I don't really know the meaning of, so I wanted to write this poem as if I did. I repudiate rebarbative, a word surrounded by microbes, wanting to enter the enigma like an asteroid and causing panic among the follicles, followed by a fluid emitted at the first sign of coagulation. Naming is a queer connection between a missing arm and its ghostly pain that the word excites when encountered in a trench or under a bridge. I was once a whole name in a neighborhood of partials. I remembered their faces from the photos attached to their chests. You were the one with hair. You were known as the diver. Many meanings have traveled to Asia, where, refreshed, they emerge in Kensington. Their lanterns, a panopticon of nostalgia. Penny Lane, a clean machine. Even when the lyrics fade, the space they occupied returns in a float. Over there, we had a China you could pay people to sweep. No can do anymore. The digital link rejects the tea house. Pinkerton is applauded in Houston, while Bechtel rebuilds a bank. We've been in this place for going on 900 years, and still I get a kick out of language. It's so like...
Rébarbatif. J'aurais pu dire rébarbatif, mot entouré de microbes, désireux de pénétrer l'énigme, tel un astéroïde, et causant la panique parmi les follicules, suivi par un fluide émis au premier signe de coagulation. La nomination est une connexion bizarre entre un bras manquant et sa douleur spectrale que le monde provoque lorsqu'on le rencontre dans une tranchée ou sous un pont. J'étais autrefois un nom complet dans un quartier de partiel. Je me souvenais de leur visage grâce aux photos fixées sur leur poitrine. Tu étais celui avec des cheveux, tu étais surnommé le plongeur. De nombreuses significations ont voyagé jusqu'en Asie, où, rafraîchies, elles émergent à Kensington. Leur lanterne, un panoptique de nostalgie, Penny Lane, machine propre, même quand les paroles s'effacent, l'espace qu'elles occupaient revient dans un char de carnaval. Là-bas, nous avions une Chine que nous faisions balayer par des gens contre salaire. Ça, plus possible. Le lien numérique rejette la maison de thé. Pinkerton est applaudi à Houston, tandis que Bechtel reconstruit une banque. Nous sommes dans cet endroit pour continuer 900 ans, et malgré tout, je prends mon pied avec le langage, c'est trop.
I think I'll end here. Okay. We're going to reverse the order, and she's going to read the translation first, so I get to have the last word. But let me just say, so this poem was written in my head when I was being given radiation treatment to kill some tumors on my auditory nerve. I had tumors, and my doctor said, well, this will take a while, so bring some music. And so I brought music, which is referred to here. But the end of the procedure there was a 50% chance I would lose my hearing. So it could be the last music I would ever hear. And so I couldn't use paper. So I just memorized this little short poem. It's called Anniversary. I should say one thing. I'm sorry. I learned sign language anticipating that I would go deaf. And the sign for the social in American Sign Language is this. So this is referred to, it's the image to me of a ship going through the water.
Michael disait qu'il a écrit ce poème après avoir reçu un traitement au rayon. Enfin, pour une tumeur, il a failli perdre entièrement l'audition. L'ouïe, pardon. Et pendant le traitement, il écoutait Josquin des Prés. Et il avait aussi appris entièrement la langue des signes, puisqu'il pensait devenir entièrement sourd. Et il précise que dans le langage des signes, le signe pour dire le social, c'est ce mouvement-là, donc c'est aussi comme une proue de navire. Donc c'est un poème anniversaire. Faisons-nous la traversée sur ce navire de Josquin jusqu'au visible, nos mains portant le miséréré, par-delà quel décibel qui salue depuis la rive, cet air populeux de bouches ouvertes, intention de dire une sorte de ciel, reliant le social comme une proue faite avec les mains pourrait fendre l'eau claire, quand l'annonciation de silence a-t-elle sonné d'abord, par quel signe?
Anniversary. Are we crossing over on this ship of Josquin into the visible, hands bearing the miserere? Across what decibels waving from shore, this populous air of mouths open, intention to speak, a kind of sky, knitting the social, as a prow made with hands could cleave clear water. When did the annunciation of silence first sound? By what sign? Thank you.